늦으면 전화할게요.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to Quick Korean. Today, we will be studying the section 늦으면 전화할게요, or I will call if I'm running late. The topic of today's lesson is telephones. We will learn about vocabulary related to phones and the grammar points 으면 and 읊게요. After studying this lesson, you will be able to talk about phone numbers in Korean. Lastly, in the culture section, we will explore making reservations and delivery in Korea. Well then, let's get started. First, listen carefully to today's dialogue. In today's dialogue, Mr. Lee makes a phone call to the restaurant. He is calling to make a reservation. What do you suppose Mr. Lee will say when he's making the reservation? Let's take a listen to the conversation and find out.
여보세요? 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요.
성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요.
제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요.
네, 늦으면 전화 주세요.
네, 늦으면 전화할게요.
So, were you able to understand the conversation? What did Mr. Lee mention when he was making the reservation? That's right, he mentioned his name and his phone number. Now, before taking a closer look at the conversation, let's first look at the vocabulary and grammar that come out in the dialogue. First is the vocabulary section for this lesson. Our first word here is 여보세요. Now, please follow along and repeat after me. 여보세요. 여보세요. Now in Korean, when you answer the phone, you say 여보세요. It is like saying hello in English when you answer the phone. Now let's go ahead and say this word together one more time. 여보세요. Now our next word here is 예약. Please follow along and repeat after me. 예약. 예약. Now Chunsu is going to go to a hotel. But before going to the hotel, he calls in advance. He needs to reserve or book a room. When you say reserve a room, book, or restaurant, in Korean we use the word 예약, which means reserve. Now let's go ahead and say the word together one more time. 예약. Now our next word here is 성함. Please follow along and repeat after me. 성함. 성함. Now 성함 is a more formal way of saying 이름, which means name. Now take a look at the picture here. The lady tells the customer to sign his name in the book. Now since he's a customer, she uses the formal word for name. Therefore, she would say 손님, 성함을 써주세요. Now let's go ahead and say the word together one more time. 성함. Now our next word here is 전화번호. Please follow along and repeat after me. 전화번호. 전화번호. Now 전화번호 here means phone number. Now if you look at the picture here, there's a phone number, and the phone number here is 010-1234-5678. In Korean, it would be read as 010-2234-5678. Now let's go ahead and say the word together one more time. 전화번호. Now our next word here is 말씀하다. Please follow along and repeat after me. 말씀하다. 말씀하다. Now, 말씀하다 is a more formal and is the honorific version of 말하다. Now take a look at the picture here. Who's talking right now? Right, it's their grandfather. Then, to show respect, instead of using 말하다, they would say 말씀하다 when referring to him. Now, let's go ahead and say the word together one more time. 말씀하다. Now, our next word here is 늦다. Please follow along and repeat after me. 늦다. 늦다. Now, Chunsu has something to do at 6 o'clock. However, he wakes up and it's 11 o'clock. So how can we describe Chunsu? We can say he's late, or in Korean, 늦었어요. Now, let's go ahead and say the word one more time. 늦다. Now, let's review the vocabulary that we just learned in this section. Now, say the phone is ringing. You pick up the phone. What's the first thing you say? Right, you would say, 여보세요. Now, Chunsu is going to the hotel. He calls the hotel ahead of time. He wants to book a room. So now, what is this in Korean? Right, it is 예약, which means to reserve. Now, what is a more formal way of saying 이름 or name? Right, we would say 성함. Now, in this picture here, we have these numbers here. We have 010, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and a picture of a phone. So it looks like this is a phone number. Now, how would we say that in Korean? Right, we would say 전화번호. When talking about someone's grandfather who is speaking, would we use the word 말하다? No. Instead, we would use the word 말씀하다. Now here, Chunsu had something to do at 6 o'clock. However, he overslept and woke up at 11 o'clock. How could we describe Chunsu? Right, we could use the word 늦다 and describe him as 늦었어요, or late. Excellent.
여보세요? 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요.
성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요.
제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요.
네, 늦으면 전화 주세요.
네, 늦으면 전화할게요.
Now, let's take a closer look at the dialogue for this lesson. In today's dialogue, Mr. Lee is on the phone with the restaurant. Why do you suppose that Mr. Lee called the restaurant? Well, let's take a look. Mr. Lee starts off by saying, 여보세요? Now, if you recall, what's the first thing you say when you answer the phone or make a call? You say, 여보세요, just like Mr. Lee said here. And what does he say? He says, 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요. So, why did he call the restaurant? Right, we see the word right here, 예약, which, if you recall, means reservation. So he's calling because he wants to make a reservation. Now, when does he want to make the reservation for? Well, we see here, we have 토요일 저녁, so Saturday evening, 6시, 6 o'clock. So now, how does the worker at the restaurant respond? Well, he responds by saying, 성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요. So he asks for the name. So recall name, the formal way of saying name is this 성함 here. And he also asks for the 전화번호, or phone number. So how does Mr. Lee respond? Well, he responds by saying, 제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요. So if we look, so first he mentions his name. He says, 제 이름은, so he says 이름, 이재훈, as we know, his name is Jaehoon Lee. And he also mentions his 전화번호, or phone number. As you can see right here, he gives that to the worker at the restaurant. So now, what does the worker say? He says, 네, 늦으면 전화 주세요. And what does Mr. Lee respond with? He says, 네, 늦으면 전화할게요. So what happened here is, what he says here is, if you're going to be late, please call us. So he says, 늦으면, if you're late, please call. 전화 주세요. And so Mr. Lee responds by saying, acknowledging that, and makes a promise. He says, okay, 늦으면, if I'm late, 전화할게요. I will make a phone call. So what do you think? It looks like around Saturday at 6 o'clock, Mr. Lee will go to a nice restaurant and have a good meal, don't you think? Great. So now let's go ahead and take a look at the grammar points that come from this dialogue. Our first grammar point here is 으면. Now this 으면 is used to describe a supposition or condition for the action that follows. So in other words, your condition will come in the front part here, and in the back part will be the action if the condition is met. So very simply, you can just think about this as if in English. So if you do this, then this. So if condition, then action. You can think about it this way. So let's go ahead and take a look at an example. So our first example here is 늦으면 전화 주세요. So if you look at the back part here, we have an action, 전화 주세요, or to make a phone call. Now, when do you make this phone call? In other words, what's the condition? Well, we have that right here. 늦으면. So you can see that we have 늦다, which means to be late, and 으면. So in other words, if we combine this 늦다 with this 으면, we get 늦으면, which means if you are late. So in other words, here's the condition, being late, and here's the result if the condition's met. So in other words, when we combine this all together, we get 늦으면 전화 주세요. Or in English, it would be, if you are late, please call. Now let's go ahead and read through the sentence together. Please repeat after me. 늦으면 전화 주세요. Great. Now let's take a look at the next example here. Our next example is 열심히 공부하면 한국말을 더 잘할 수 있어요. Now, if we look at this back part first, the action that results, we get 한국말을 더 잘할 수 있어요. Or that you can speak Korean better. So now, what's the condition for this? Well, in the front part here, we have 열심히 공부하다, or to study hard. So in other words, the condition to speaking Korean better is to work hard. So to combine that into one sentence, in the condition here, the 열심히 공부하다, we have this, so the condition here would be this, we have this 면 here, and we get if you study hard. And then the resulting action would be, you can speak Korean better. Now let's go ahead and read through the sentence together. Please repeat after me. 열심히 공부하면 한국말을 더 잘 할 수 있어요. Excellent. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the usage in greater detail. Now this 으면 here is used together with verbs, and again, it's used to describe a condition, and if that condition met, then the action in the second part takes place. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at these examples. So in the first example here, we have 늦다. And what do you notice about 늦다? Well, it ends in a consonant. So when we have a verb that ends in a consonant, we add this 으면 right here. And in this case, when we add the 으면 to the 늦, we get 늦으면. Now, what about our second example here? We have 공부하다. And as you can see in 공부하다, it does not end in a consonant. It ends in a vowel, so you can see that right here. And in that case, we just simply add 면. So in this case, since 공부하다 does not end in consonant, we just add 면 to get us 공부하면. Now let's go ahead and read through these examples together. Please repeat after me. 늦다, 늦으면, 공부하다, 공부하면. Well done. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the next grammar point. Our next grammar point here is 읊게요. Now this 읊게요 is used to express a will or a promise about an action that will take place in the future. Now one thing to note is this grammar point here is used only in the first person. So in other words, it would be used with first person nouns such as 나, 저, 우리, 저희. And so it's never used together with the second or third person. Also to note, this is used more in speech than it is actually in writing. Now let's go ahead and take a look at an example here. Our first example is 늦으면 전화할게요. Now, as we learned earlier, we have this 늦으면, so if I'm late. So what's the result? 전화할 거예요, or you won't make a call. But now, to say this with a little stronger intention, in other words, like a promise, express one's will, you would add this 할게요 to get us 전화할게요. So it expresses basically if this is met, then you're more likely to make that phone call. So let's go ahead and read through this sentence together. Please repeat after me. 늦으면 전화할게요. Great. Let's go ahead and take a look at another example. Our next example here is 내일까지 책을 읽을게요. So, which means we will read the book by tomorrow. So let's say a teacher assigned the students some homework. And this is their homework assignment. So upon receiving that assignment, the students make a promise. Okay, we will read it by tomorrow. So they make a promise with the teacher. So they add this 읊게요 to the 읽다 right here. So we have 책을 읽다. And to the back of that, to express their promise, you could see that 읊게요 is added to get 읽을게요. Now let's go ahead and read through the sentence together. Please repeat after me. 내일까지 책을 읽을게요. Excellent. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the usage of this grammar point in greater detail. So here, as you can see, this grammar point 읊게요 is used together with action verbs such as 전화하다 and 읽다. Now let's take a look at the first verb here, 전화하다. Now as you can see, this 전화하다 does not end in a consonant, it ends in a vowel. And so, in that case, what do? Well, we use this final consonant sound 를, 게요. So what happens is when these two combine, so this combines with this, you can think about this going in the empty spot here, and we get the result 전화할게요. Now what about this 읽다 right here? What do we notice? Well, it ends in a consonant. So if the verb ends in a consonant, what we do is we use the 읊게요, as you can see right here, to get us 읽을게요. Now let's go ahead and read through the examples. Please repeat after me. 전화하다, 전화할게요. 읽다, 읽을게요. Well done. Now let's go ahead and take another listen to the dialogue for this section.
여보세요? 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요.
성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요.
제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요.
네, 늦으면 전화 주세요.
네, 늦으면 전화할게요.
Now, let's take another look at the dialogue. This time, let's read through it together. Listen and repeat after me. 여보세요? 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요. 성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요. 제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요. 네, 늦으면 전화해 주세요. 네, 늦으면 전화할게요. Now, let's go through the dialogue again. This time, you read the role of the person working at the restaurant.
여보세요? 토요일 저녁 6시에 예약을 하고 싶어요. 제 이름은 이재훈이고 전화번호는 010-5337-3010이에요. 네, 늦으면 전화할게요.
Great! Now let's go through the dialogue once more. This time, you read the role of Mr. Lee.
성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요. 네, 늦으면 전화 주세요.
Well done! Now it's time for speaking practice. In this section, we will practice using 으면, which we learned a little earlier. In this section, look at the picture and complete the sentence. Now, does 준수 have a lot of money? No. But what if he did? So we can see here, we have the phrase 돈이 많다, which means to have a lot of money. Now, if he had a lot of money, it looks like he wants to travel across the world. So then how can we say this? Right, by using 으면, we can say 돈이 많으면 세계 여행을 하고 싶어요. Now, in this picture here, we have 지민. And if you look at the second part of the sentence here, we have 시험을 잘 볼 거예요. Or, she is going to do well on the test. Now, does Jimin do well on her tests all the time? No, unfortunately. So, in the picture, she is studying hard, or in Korean we say 열심히 공부하다. So, if she studies hard, then you would imagine she should do well. So, how do we make this into a sentence? In other words, how would we say, if she studies hard, she will do well on the test? Right, we would say 열심히 공부하면 시험을 잘 볼 거예요. Now, let's practice using 읊게요, which we learned a little earlier. Now here, 준수 says, 이메일 보내면 꼭 답장하세요. Which means, if I send you an email, please reply. Now, his friend makes a promise. What is he promising? Well, the action here is 답장하다, or to send a reply. Now, how would he respond to 준수? Right, he would say, 네, 꼭 답장할게요. Now here, 준수 asks a question to his friend. He asks, 몇 시쯤 전화하실 거예요? Or, about what time are you going to call? As you can see, here in the picture here, we have a clock, and it looks like it's 7 o'clock, and the verb here would be 전화하다, or to call. So then how would he respond? Right, he would respond by saying 7시쯤에 전화할게요. Now here, 준수 tells his friend something. He says, 한국에 오면 꼭 연락하세요. Or when you come to Korea, please make sure to contact me. So his friend makes a promise. What kind of promise? Well, the verb here is 연락하다 or to contact. So how would he respond to 준수? He would say, 네, 꼭 연락할게요. Well done. Now it's time for listening practice. This time, Jimin calls a restaurant to make a reservation. When do you think she will make the reservation for? Also, when she makes the reservation, what do you think she will need to tell the worker? Listen carefully to the conversation.
여보세요? 금요일 1시에 예약을 하고 싶어요.
성함하고 전화번호 좀 말씀해 주세요.
제 이름은 이지민이고 전화번호는 010-4058-6897이에요.
네, 계획이 바뀌면 전화 주세요.
네, 계획이 바뀌면 전화할게요.
Were you able to understand the conversation? Great, then let's write down the information about the reservation. First is 예약 요일, or the day of the week of the reservation. Now, on what day of the week did she make the reservation for? Do you remember? Right. She made the reservation for Friday, so we would check 금, which is short for 금요일. Next, we have 예약 시간, or reservation time. So what time did Jimin make the reservation for? Correct. She made the reservation for 1 o'clock, so we would write 1 o'clock or 1시. Now, what did the worker at the restaurant ask Jimin for? Right. He asked her for the name and phone number of the person making the reservation. So, we can see here, we have 예약하는 사람, or the person making the reservation. So the first entry here we have is 성함, which, as you recall, is the formal way of saying name. So what's the name of the person making the reservation? Right, it's Jimin, and her full name would be 이지민. And also, what is Jimin's phone number? Right, it was 010-4058-6897. Or in Korean, we would read it as 010-4058-6897. Excellent! Now it's time for the Vocabulary Plus section. Here, we will look at more words related to phones. Now, our first word here is 전화하다. Now here, 전화하다 means to make a call. Now here, Haejin and Junsu are talking on the phone. However, suppose they could not talk right now. Then, Junsu makes a promise to call a little later. So, he would probably say to Haejin, 이따가 전화할게요. Or, I will call you a little later. Now, our next word here is 통화하다. Now, in the picture here, we have two people who are talking on the phone. In Korean, we can say 통화해요, or which means to be talking on the phone. Now, Mr. Lee wants to talk with James on the phone. Then he would say, 제임스 씨와 통화하고 싶어요. Now, our next word here is 전화를 걸다. Now, when you want to make a call, what do you have to do? You must first dial the number, or in Korean we would say 전화를 걸다. Now, let's say I call a friend. Then about me, I could say I dialed. Or 친구에게 전화를 걸었어요. Now our next word here is 전화를 잘못 걸다. Now here, this student right here wants to call Jimin. But when she called, someone else answered. In fact, this person right here ended up answering. Why did that person answer? It's because the student here dialed the wrong number. In Korean, to say dial the wrong number, we would say 전화를 잘못 걸다. Then, the person who answered probably would say 전화를 잘못 거셨습니다. Or that you dialed the wrong number. Now our next word here is 전화를 받다. Now take a look at the picture. As you can see, the phone is ringing. So what do? You pick up the phone, or in Korean we could say 전화를 받아요. So who is answering the phone in this case? How would I say that it's my friend who's answering the phone? I could say 친구가 전화를 받았어요. Our next word here is 전화를 끊다. Now let's say I made a call and the phone call is ended. So what do? Well, I would hang up, or in Korean, I could say 전화를 끊어요. So using this, I could say 친구와 이야기를 하고 전화를 끊었어요. Or after talking with my friend, I hung up. Now next we have 전화번호가 몇 번이에요? Now let's say Junsu doesn't know his teacher's phone number. He would like to get her number. So he would probably ask something like 선생님, 전화번호가 몇 번이에요? Now let's practice using the words that we just learned. Look at the picture and complete the sentences. Now here we have 친구에게 전화를. So in the first picture on the left, what is he doing? Well, this person is dialing, or 전화를 걸었어요. So if we put this all together, we get 친구에게 전화를 걸었어요. Or that he called his friend or dialed his friend. Now, look at this picture right here on the right. Did the person here dial the number correctly? No, she dialed someone else's number. Then, what could we say about her? We could say 전화를 잘못 걸었어요. Well done. This time, look at the picture and complete the sentence once more. Now, look at this picture here on the left. The phone is ringing. Well, if the phone is ringing, then what do? 전화를, right, we'd say 받아요. 전화를 받아요, or to pick up the phone. Now let's say you were talking on the phone and the conversation has ended right here. So in this case, what would you do? Right, we could say 전화를 끊어요. 전화를 끊어요, or to hang up the phone. Excellent. Finally, it is time for the Korean culture section. Today, we will explore making reservations and delivery in Korea. How do you think that you would make a reservation in Korean? Also, how do you think they deliver things in Korea? Let's take a look and find out.
한국의 예약과 배달 문화. 한국에서 어떤 장소를 사용하려면 전화나 인터넷을 이용해 예약하면 됩니다. 한국에는 배달 문화가 발달하여 물건을 사거나 음식을 주문한 뒤 집에서 받을 수 있습니다. 또한 급히 전달할 물건이 있을 때는 오토바이를 타고 빠르게 가 물건을 전달해주는 퀵 서비스를 이용할 수 있습니다.
Now, let's go over what we learned today. Today's topic was telephones. We learned about vocabulary related to phones and the grammar points 으면 and 읊게요. Finally, in the culture section, we explored making reservations and delivery in Korean. So, how do you feel? Do you think you can now give out your phone number in Korean? Great! Well, this brings us to the end of this lesson. See you next time!